G'day, it's Joel Rasmussen for Southern Cross Combat here, and I'm here at Hex HQ in Melbourne talking to the head of the show, Mr. Jacob Watts. Jacob, thank you so much for talking to me today. How are you going today?
Yeah, I'm really good. Looking forward to the show in just over 2 weeks, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Joel.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and yes, you said it there, we're talking Hex 29 coming up in 2 weeks, March 2nd at the Melbourne Pavilion, and also we're going to talk a little bit about Hex 30 coming up in May, and then we're going to talk about some other bits and bobs that I want to ask you about. First off, how are we feeling about starting the year? We had a good, Hex had a good year last year, at least in my opinion, my humble opinion. How are we feeling going to kick off 2024?
Yeah, last year was a huge success for us. It was our first full year since we took over, and we just made a lot of strides to becoming the best promotion in the country. And I think that 2024, we're going to further cement that. We've got some big cards planned. Obviously, we're going to New Zealand, which is huge for us. The March cards just stacked top to bottom. And, yeah, we're really going to shock the country with what we got planned for the end of the year.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. But talking about Hex 29, there are 3 title fights going on Hex 29. I kind of want to talk about each one. Headlining. Well, first off, I want to ask, Abdallah Biayda versus Harry Webb. That is the headlining fight?
Nah, it'll be Jono and Alden now as the headlining.
I wanted to ask about that because I know historically the heaviest weight class goes on top. From a logistics standpoint, is that anything difficult to switch? Because I know that welterweight title fight kind of came around, I don't want to say last minute, but came up later. Is there anything you literally had to switch to do that, or is that like pretty easy?
Look, we'd always planned to have Jono on the show anyway. It was just a matter of finding a suitable opponent for him. And then, yeah, I guess the Alden Bates thing came up and it was perfect timing. So we just slotted that straight in. We got that deal done in about 12 hours and slotted it straight into the main event. But all 3 of these title fights are main event worthy. So I think that the fans and everyone watching at home are in for a spectacular night.
Talking about that, you said it took about 12 hours and you slotted it all in. That was kind of a hectic time. How did that come to be? Is that as easy as getting a phone call and a text message? Like, was that difficult? What was that like to book that fight?
Yeah, it was pretty easy, to be honest. Obviously, we saw the news online that Alden was out, and I had actually heard before that Caleb was out, and I'd actually heard before that he was pulling out. Once the news became official, I got a call from Alden's team, and yeah, we just put together an offer and signed it straight away. It was a pretty easy one to get across the line. So, yeah.
What do you feel about Alden's development as a fighter? We've seen Jono in the Hex cage. His last, I think, 3 or 4 times out. We've seen him in that cage. It's been a little bit since we've seen Alden in the Hex cage. How have you felt his development as a fighter the last time we saw him to now?
Yeah, I think he's a lot smarter and a bit and more composed. You know, he's got that just ridiculous one-punch knockout power. He's had that throughout his whole career, but you know, there was times where maybe he would be a little bit reckless, but I think now he's really dialed in and switched on, and he's a lot more calculated and able to find the finish without trying to force it.
Now, to make sure this interview doesn't get off the rails, I do have my cheat sheet here. There's a lot to talk about. I don't want to leave any stone unturned, so I'm quickly going to look at this. You said that you were hoping to get Jono on this show. In the cage after winning the title, he seemed happy to turn around whenever. He also mentioned getting a stamp in his passport. Was this the show you wanted him on? Were you maybe Hex 30, or was this about the timeline for him?
Why not both? You know, we love Jono at Hex, and we've got some big plans for him this year. If he gets through this fight, there's obviously a fight in New Zealand, but whether that's Alden that gets through the fight as well, we'd be more than happy to bring Alden over to New Zealand as well. But yeah, it was always the plan to get him on this one first. If we couldn't get him on this one, then we'd take him over to New Zealand. Now we've got him matched, and I'd expect to see the winner of this head over to New Zealand and fight in Auckland.
Now, talking about that very possibility, also on this card, we have Matt Vale versus Kit Campbell, 2 former welterweight champions in this very promotion. Is that would you be looking at that potentially as a number 1 contender fight? That's been whispered about, but do we know if that's going to happen?
Not necessarily a number 1 contenders fight, but it's definitely a fight that will shape the division going forward in 2024. There's a lot of top level welterweights floating around right now, and there's a few good guys over in New Zealand. You've got the Varkey brothers as well, so there's definitely a lot of options moving forward. But I think that this fight's kind of going to shape what might happen later in the year.
Talking about that, you said heaps of talent in New Zealand. The fights that have been announced for Hex 30 already, a lot of New Zealand talent, which obviously, as expected, doing a show in Auckland. How do you kind of do that balance of like the Australian guys, but we want to bring the New Zealand guys and give them the spotlight that we can give them? How do you decide kind of who goes where?
Yeah, going over there, we wanted to put a massive focus into the New Zealand guys because we want to build a market over there and start highlighting the fighters in New Zealand. We're going to still be doing 4 shows in Australia this year. So I guess the Melbourne guys aren't going to miss out on a show, but we can really highlight the talent over in New Zealand and bring some of the Australian guys over to test themselves.
Now, talking still on Hex 29, Harry Webb versus Abdallah Biayda fight we talked about at the top of the interview. How did that fight come to be? Abdallah's obviously your interim featherweight champion. I know he's fought at lightweight before, but how did that fight come to be for him to go up a weight class and fight Harry Webb?
Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle trying to find Abdallah a fight at featherweight. He's beaten a lot of the top guys, and obviously Khan Offley's moved overseas now as well. So it was a bit of a struggle to find him a fight at featherweight, and he just wants the toughest challenges. He said he'd be more than happy to fight at lightweight and go for a double belt. Our last 2 division champions now 2-0 in the UFC and on a tear. So he wants to get that second belt, and Harry Webb is just supremely confident in his skills, and he said yes without even thinking about it.
Talking about Harry Webb there accepting that fight, we all know Harry Webb's game. We all know Harry Webb has fantastic showings, but 3-0 in professional mixed martial arts going up against a guy who's had 5 title fights, I think, in Abdallah's whole professional career, and he just kind of immediately went for it?
Yeah, that's how confident him and his team are in his abilities. And I think over the course of 2023 in the Australian scene, we saw a lot of champions that necessarily weren't as experienced in the professional ranks. For example, Micallef, who was 4-0 when he fought Joey. I think that kind of stigma around, he's not ready yet, has completely disappeared. I think everyone in the scene knows that Harry's ready for a title shot. And, him and his team are supremely confident in his skills.
I know there was some buzz about Harry Webb and Jack Lyons eventually having a fight. I think I asked you about it after the last Hex event, as well as I saw on social media there's been some discussion around that. I understand in the fight game, someone wins a fight, and especially in a promotion like this, they're getting looked at. So you never know for certain. But is that a fight you could see happening down the line?
Yeah, definitely. Jack broke his hand. I think he broke his thumb in his last fight on Hex 28, and he just wasn't ready to make the turnaround for this card. But he's someone that we definitely will have back on, hopefully in June in Melbourne.
Now, talking about the third title fight on the card, talking about Paul Loga versus Cody Haddon. I just want to kind of get your general thoughts on how that came to be in that fight. Paul Loga obviously meaning to fight on that last card, didn't work out. Cody Haddon also meaning to fight on that last card, but didn't work out. What are your thoughts on that fight?
Yeah, I think it's a great fight. Paul Loga's super game. He's an absolute dog in the cage, and he knows how to find a finish. And obviously, we've seen Cody once in the Hex cage, and we've seen him fight elsewhere, and he's shown that he can find a finish as well. So I think this will be a really interesting fight on who can find that finish first. Obviously, Sean Gauci came to us, said he wanted to drop down to flyweight, and these are 2 of the best bantamweights in the country, and it just made sense with Paul supposed to have fought on the last show, and Cody being the interim champion.
Talking about Sean Gauci, at first, what are your general thoughts on him making that seeming permanent now drop down to flyweight?
Yeah, I think it's great for him and his career. I think at flyweight he will be, a natural size compared to the other flyweights. He's obviously got a win over Steve Erceg at flyweight as well. So I think, one fight at flyweight and he's probably getting looked at for the UFC.
The double champ status is something that is very commonly sought after, and that was kind of a talk of a possibility with Sean Gauci. Obviously, he has vacated his undisputed title. Is that something you would have, not necessarily, I don't want to say preferred, but do you like the double champ thing? Would you have liked him to hold 2 belts if he could go down to flyweight, or are you happy with him to drop it and make the permanent move?
Look, I'm happy for him to drop it because we've got the interim champ Cody there, and I wouldn't want him to be fighting and defending the interim title. I prefer for him to have a chance to fight for the undisputed title and for Paul, for him not to have to challenge for the interim title. I'd rather it just be for the undisputed title, and then when the time comes, Sean can challenge for the undisputed flyweight title.
Talking about another fight on that card, Michael Manu versus Colby Thickness. Now, that last fight Michael Manu had with Emran Hekamuglu. Two things. One, there was some bad blood in that fight. Obviously, we'll see fight week and at the press events and stuff, but I don't know if there'll be as much bad blood in any of the fights. Is that nice to kind of walk into a room and hopefully have it not be like two people want to murder each other this time?
That was an interesting landscape at that, especially at that press conference with Emrahan getting into Paul Loga as well. But I think this show will be a lot more relaxed. I know that there is obviously a bit of history between Matt Vale and Kit Campbell, and I know their thoughts on each other. So who knows? We might have version number 2 with those two.
As well as that, tell you about Michael Manu. His last fight with Emrahan was originally, from my understanding, slated for number 1 contenders. However, then when the bantamweight title fight fell through, we knew that fight would eventually have to happen. So it was kind of number 1 contenders and then not. I spoke to Michael Manu. He said he didn't want to fight his teammate Sean Gauci. Now not the bantamweight champion. Could you see Colby Thickness versus Michael Manu being a number 1 contenders fight?
Yeah, definitely. We did say that last time. And then obviously this whole kind of reshuffle in the bantamweight division happened. But I think now that Sean's moving down to flyweight, the winner of this fight will move on and fight the winner of the Paul Loga and Cody Haddon fight.
As long as that, if anyone has seen the press conferences that Hex does, of course, kind of unprecedented in the local scene, so it's not necessarily to say this is what happens at them. But historically, there's been 3 fights there. There's been 3 and 3 on each side. You talk about Kit Campbell and Matt Vale there. We've got these 3 title fights. That fight as well. A lot of interesting fights on the card. How is this press conference still going to be 6 people? Are you going to get how many tables can we put together to get how many people on this card on the press conference?
Yeah, we might have to book out Rod Laver and get a full stage in there and get everyone in there. But no, we'll have the 3 title fights and we'll have Matt and Kit in attendance too. So we'll just have the 4 fights for this one, so 1 extra.
Very nice. It's growing, though. Now, that's everything I have for you for Hex 29, and I want to talk... Oh, actually, before we move on from Hex 29, it seems, as I just talked about there, very, very nice card, really coming together. I have to ask, because I have to ask, is there anything else in the pipeline? You never know. As we know with the title fight, it comes together at the last minute. Is there anything for Hex 29 still in the pipeline?
We might have another little surprise for the Hex fans, but it's not confirmed yet, so... hopefully we'll have something special to announce at the end of this week.
Well, very exciting. Watch this space. Watch the Hex space. Now, moving on to Hex 30. Most, at least I would imagine, most mixed martial arts promotions, when wanting to look to expand, would go interstate. You guys are not doing the interstate thing. You're jumping. You're going international. Why the decision to go international?
Just because of the untapped potentials out there. You know, the talent out there is insane. And we feel like we can really take over the market over there and build a really good profile in New Zealand. We've got a lot of good connections already in New Zealand as well, and I think it's the scene over there is super exciting right now. It's really starting to grow to the level that it is in Australia, and we want to get in there early and help build that as well.
How are we feeling about Hex 30? I'm sure a lot of the focus is on Hex 29 at the moment, but we've still got this. How's it all? It's all coming together behind the scenes. How's it all going?
Yeah, if you were privy to our matchmaking meetings, you'd be pretty blown away at the card that we're putting together. It's going to be stacked just top to bottom. I know I say that about every Hex card, but yeah, this one's going to be something special. We're really going to go all out for Hex 30, and I think we're really just going to blow it out of the waters.
Is there anything you can tell us about any of the fights yet to be announced?
There'll be a couple of title fights on the card. But I can't give too much away yet.
Could you say what the fighter's name rhymes with?
I can't, but I'll be sure to make it. I'll make sure to let you know as soon as we have an announcement coming up, so you'll be the first one to know.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Talking about that, and you mentioned it when I asked about Jono. You said, why not both? Will Hex 29 will affect Hex 30 more or less?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the welterweight title fight will be one that potentially affects what's going to happen for Hex 30, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess, how everything plays out. Obviously, if the winner of that is ready to make the turnaround for Hex 30, whether there's any injuries or anything like that. So, yeah, we'll get through Hex 29 first, and then we'll make the decision on what's going to happen with Hex 30.
How, like, the literal... I'm sure it's difficult. Not I'm sure, I do know. It is difficult to put on at a Hex event. We've got so many different moving parts in the mixed martial arts scene. Now doing that all internationally, I'm not sure if you've necessarily got a chance to head over there. So you're kind of probably doing it remote as well. Is it like more difficult than it has been to book, not necessarily book, but run Hex 30 than Hex 29?
No, we've got a great team over in New Zealand already that's helping us out on the ground. We're actually heading over there this weekend as well, just to meet a few of the fighters, check out the venue and all that kind of stuff. But we've got a great team that's been working non-stop over there as well. And, you know, we've got a great team here in Melbourne that just works around the clock tirelessly to make these things happen.
Now, the first announcement for Hex 30 was Brando Periric. He is going to be on the card. His opponent is yet to be announced. Any idea who he could be facing?
Yeah, we have an idea, and that fight should hopefully be announced next week.
He also announced that prior to that, he will be fighting as well in New Zealand. As a promoter, is there any worry with that he is fighting before fighting for you guys?
Look, there's always like a worry that he's going to pick up an injury. You know, he could break his hand with a punch. There's a whole plethora of things that could happen, but I know that his team just want to keep him super busy, and I'm not going to stop him from doing that.
Now, there's a lot of Hex 30 that we are yet to see, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing those announcements that you have kind of teased. Is there anything else about Hex 30 that you'd like to let the people out there know about?
Not yet. All will be revealed in time. We just want to get through Hex 29 first, and then, yeah, we'll really start pumping Hex 30, and I think we're really going to amaze everyone with what we've got planned.
And now that's everything I have for Hex 29 and Hex 30. I've got some little bits and bobs, not too many, but still things I wanted to ask you. I'm a nerd who notices things like this. Historically, when I've been attending Hex has been on a Friday. Now, since doing Festival Hall, it seems to have made a move to Saturday. Why the decision to move the day? Was that something you guys consciously did? Why the move to Saturdays?
Yeah, so the reason it got moved to Saturdays was so we could start it a bit early in the day and get some more fights in. Obviously, having 5 events this year, we're going to have a chance for more fighters to be on the card. But with it being on a Saturday, we can start it, an hour, 2 hours earlier, get an extra 1, 2, 3 fights in, and get more talent on the card. So that's the sole reason for it. It's just too hard to start it at 4 o'clock on a Friday when you've got the afternoon traffic, everyone's coming home from work. So that's why we've moved it to a Saturday.
Not to talk numbers, but have you seen a benefit from that? Is because people aren't necessarily coming home from work. Has that been better for the business?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're about 50 tickets off selling out this show, and we're still 2.5 weeks away. So it's still tracking as good as it usually does. We've sold out every show we've had since we took over, so it's hard to tell. But yeah, I think the general consensus from the public and even from the fighters is that they prefer it on a Saturday night.
Now, doing 5 shows this year rather than 4, what does kind of the calendar look like? Where do you, historically, if you're doing 4 shows, you do it kind of once a quarter. Yeah. Where does that extra show go? What does the timeline for Hex this year look like?
Yep, so we're going to have another show in June, so June 14th, we'll be back in Melbourne. And then we'll have August and November. So our standard shows for the end of the year, but we'll do a little kind of double up, I guess, May and June, and just, be building both events together.
Will that June event be at the Pavilion?
We haven't confirmed a venue yet.
Would looking at either the Pavilion or Festival Hall, is that something you guys are kind of looking at doing again?
Yeah, there's heaps of venues in Melbourne that would be really suitable for Hex. So it's just a decision that me and the team have to make.
Now, finally, not finally, there's 2 more questions, I lied. I do with words, not numbers. What is, for yourself, both for yourself as Jacob Watts and for Hex Fight Series, what are the goals for 2024?
We just want to continue on from what we did last year. We want to continue giving the fighters a platform to get to the UFC or to, the promotion like One or PFL or wherever they want to go. We want to continue giving them that that platform, we want to continue growing and getting on bigger stages and just continue to shock the country in what we're doing and just blowing everything out of the water.
And now, finally, talking about that, looking forward into 2024. When you look at Hex in 2023 and you look at Hex in 2024, looking forward, what are the differences you see?
I think now that we've got our first year under our belt and we're obviously more experienced, I think the growth's going to continue rising, and it's going to rise at an even more astronomical rate.
Jacob Watts, I thank you so much for your time. I thank you for having me at the Hex office. I appreciate you allowing me to use the space. Hex 29 coming up in 2 weeks on March 2nd. Hex 30 in New Zealand on May 4th. And then Hex 31 in June. I thank you so much for the time. Thank you for talking to me today.
Thanks, Joel.